international.
Yes. We had Wrentschur who will present practices of legislative theatre in his organization, their organization. You're more than one, huh?
Yes.
So, yeah.
Yes. And how to is it possible to call it this? I can do it here. Okay. And it's where it's here. Okay, yes, hello. Thank you for the invitation to have some minutes here to present our legislative field work we are doing in not so far away from here. So in the southeast of Austria, we are located in Graz. And that means that we are an association called InterACT. And this has been existing since 1999. And we're focusing very much on forum theatre, legislative theatre, and some other sorts of interactive theatre. And I think during the years we could collect something. And I like to share some of our insights, some of our what we found important doing legislative theatre projects. When I was listening, or not listening, I was happy that this was in English, the movie, which I liked very much, because I could really find a lot of connection about the issues, what is about the legislative theatre, because it was like, when we started with this, it was around 2002. It was really the question: is this possible, and how is it possible? Because, as it was mentioned in the movie, when Augusto was in Rio de Janeiro, he was elected. He was somehow part of the political system. Yeah? So, and then you are in another power situation that you. And for us, it was more we are outside of the system, and then getting the question: how can we get in? Somehow, and will this be acknowledged? And when we had I was just remembered that the president of the Styrian parliament some years ago, he said, what, you want to come with theatre into this parliament, but there is theatre all the day. So what is the new thing? So this is it's a tricky thing. But I think that as we are doing this work, I found this connection, this dialogue between people and communities concerned by different issues and their desires on the one side, and they are somehow try to present this in a forum theatre play. And on the other side, the decision makers who are doing their laws all the time and who are somehow making their negotiations. We found it very important. What can be ways to connect these realities? And I think theatre has if it is really theatre, if it is not only sitting and talking. So if it is really has these aspects, these powerful aspects of theatre, which have to do with emotions, which have to do also with symbolic symbols somehow, and which is really somehow it is not realistic. Yeah? It is not reproducing reality, but somehow it represents reality, not of one people, but of a lot of people. So then it can be. We found out that it can be a tool, but it needs quite more. In theatre, in foreign theatre. These are This is the town hall in Graz. These were some members of our first, more or less, legislative theatre project about homelessness in the city of Graz. It was our first try somehow, and really it ends here in the town hall in Graz. And for us, this was because this is also symbolic, because this here is normally the other places where as it called, the mayor of the city and all the members of the city council are sitting and speaking. Here, people all more affected with homelessness are speaking from their positions, and in the audience, politicians of the city of Graz. Not only politicians politicians were sitting and had to listen. And it was interesting because when you entered this space, and it was all the people, all the members of this project, they were very shy because it's such a place of respect that, you know, this is not our place. So what we were doing were, I remember an exercise of war, we did the same in Munich, in a town hall, that we ran around the space with our main messiahs, main sentences about, because we had written a declaration about the rights of homeless people, the city of Graz, and first it was very quiet and it became more and more loud and loud. This was funny because when there was one responsible guy for this hall, he got a little bit nervous what we were doing, running away, shouting, and so. But this was important that you really get the feet on the ground there, because it's a place of power, and if we want to empower ourselves, we have sometimes also to be aware of that. After this, we were very happy because it was after a series of performances. We went into the town hall, we presented the play, and the politicians, and not only the politicians, but people from social organizations, and so they were very much involved. I really liked the situation. It was such a really thing. It was really, everyone was somehow involved by how can we solve this. And we were, yes, that's it. And then, and we were handshake, and the declaration, and our proposals for, not so much for laws, because the city is not in a lawmaking, but they can do other things, projects. And then the weeks passed, and so on, and there was no reaction anymore. And this was for us really a very important thing, because we did a lot of work before, but this is the next step for the next big work you have to do when you're doing a legislative theatre process. It was also in the movie there. It's not stopping there. It's a new, I think, if you're entering these political spaces, from there a new journey has to start somehow. And this needs beside the theatre, a lot of other things you have to do. What we learn, and this is something like an overview when we're doing projects like this, it's very important for us collaborations and networking from the very beginning. So it was also in the movie. It's good to have a good research and to have networking with activists, with grassroots initiatives, but also with the administration and decision makers. You have somehow to find out who could be really a supportive person for this project within the political system, for example. And even in the administration, this is also very interesting, bureaucracy is very often an enemy. But for people who are somehow very much dependent on social services like homeless people and things like this, we have to find other ways to somehow to deal with these issues there. And we found out that even in the administration, there are very often people who don't like the situation they are. So it's really interesting to find out who could be also a kind of a partner for a changing process. Yeah, and this is the main thing, that this development of a forum theatre play, as you saw before, then the interactive performances. We say the dialogue, and also kind of a collective research with the public about finding solutions. And then this is the also very important step about the evaluation, transfer, and implementation of results. I'm just thinking about what could be. Perhaps seeing this when we after we create somehow a networking collaborations around the project, then we very often be doing nearly a 1 week community workshop. So we try to invite people whom we normally don't know to take part at least 4, 5, 6 days intensive workshop. So it's normally a workshop based on all these games and all these things, and on image theatre, as you can see here a little bit. Yeah? And this is also always, for us, it's always together to find out what are really the topics, what are really the issues that people are, I would say, suffering, or where the oppression really is affecting their lives. And There are a lot of things which are important, which I cannot tell you now. When you're doing this, because you need a space for respect. You need a place where everyone can, on the one side, relax, can have fun, as you see before, laughing and playing together, but at the same time, more and more digging under the surface and see what comes up. I think it was interesting when you said before that the people who are still working in precarious situations, they don't want first define themselves as precarious worker. Here in this project, we're working about the issue of poverty in Austria, and most of the people would say, "But I'm not poor." Because to be poor is really it's not a description, a neutral description, but it's a stigmatization. Yeah? So you have to go through, and then very often we consider that the people, for example, poverty experiencing people, they think that they are alone with the issues, or that they are ashamed about what they experience, or they think it's their individual perspective or thought or whatever. So I think it's very important to give time to develop in such a process that these different perspectives, this different individual subjective experience can somehow put together. When Roberto before was making this with his hands, and then more and more something begins to become formed, getting a form and so on. Okay, but this needs time, and this needs transparent conditions, frames, rules, all this. What we are also sometimes, when we do legislative theatre projects, we do also kind of public relations work, using also theatre. As you can see here, this was also the project about poverty. It was great to have this golden horse. And the man here, it's Martin. He was in September. He was at the end here. He was like the investor going to the east. And all the others, you can see them who have to push this. They're all, and so on and so on. And street theater, and then we also try that this is at the same time also reported in the newspapers. That we can really, that it's not only a little event, but for some weeks people get, this is about this, it's about this. Yeah, this was also a street theater, not for itself, but while we were doing a more or less legislative theatre project about the urban green spaces, or in the public space of Graz, because there's a lot of constructions going on and investors who have their interest, and more the spaces become less for the people. Okay, this is not so. This is perhaps what you can see here. This is perhaps a difference, because we are not so much working with the metabolizing cells during the performance. What we very often do, that we ask the people after the experience of a performance to write down some proposals or so, but we are not working out with this proposal during the performance itself. So we separate it, as it originally somehow was separated. So we have then, after this process, for example, after a series of 10 performances, we collect all the suggestions, all the interventions, and then we try to analyze together, is there a main, or are there some main designs that we can somehow identify? And that we, as you can see here, people who are part of the project team, people who are part of our networking partners, people who are somehow also, let's call them life experience experts, or experts who have a special expertise on this issue. And then we try to work out what are really the main proposals, political proposals we have. But it is always, for us, this kind of feedback process is very important. Okay, there's only 2 more minutes. This is only an image which was really after, yes, Martin again, sitting, this was a project, it's called Zusammenspiel, playing together, and it was about something like a playground in Graz, We heard about there are so many conflicts there between the users of this playground and their ethnic conflicts. Okay, yeah, because it's in a... And then we want to try out what is really going on there. And we found out that at this place that there is, together with the young people who are using this place, that there is that there's so less space, so few space there, that the different interests of the users of this space, they come into conflicts. And then on the second, on the third level, it seems to be that there are conflicts between Austrians and people, foreigners and things like that. What was interesting here, that when we're doing also our research, we found out that in the area of this playground there's some schools who have big sport areas. Of our forum theater play about poverty, after really a series of 20 or 30 performances. So sometimes this is also important, because when you say, oh, a lot of people have joined this, a lot of people were involved, sometimes we had even the feeling that some of the politicians had a kind of support from this. When they can say this was really not a bubble, but it was really going to the public and all the things were documented, it gives it sometimes more legitimation. And we had the situation in the Styrian parliament that right after performance, all of the representatives of the political parties said, yes, this special idea we want to go on with. And the good thing was, and also this idea and this idea, the good thing was that one of our colleagues has made a movie out of it, only for our private documentation. And then he said, he thought that there's so good, interesting material, he wants to make a movie out of it. And then it was very interesting, because half a year later we found out that one or two things really they were made to were put into the political process, and we were happy about it. But a lot of other things they promised us were not important anymore. So what we did, we invited them, the same politicians, from a discussion to a presentation in the cinema of Graz, where we were presenting this movie. And it was really interesting, because all the statements of them were there, and all they have promised. And it was really interesting, because I never saw this so often, that even political people are humans and they are ashamed. They were ashamed. And it was interesting, because the next day they decided together to somehow to decide for a kind of advisory board for this, that this can go on. Okay, but this all needs a lot of time, resources, pushing energy, patience, always being in contact with activists, and it needs, and this is what I can tell you now.
One-minute question. Or later, if you join him for lunch, or he joins you.
I just have one question for you or everyone. Do you have any information? You said one law was accepted in Austria with legislative theater. Do you have any information? How is it like in other European countries or around the world?
Okay, to be more specific about this,
yes.
What you heard about this one law was one of the last legislative theater projects where it comes from the government, the idea of doing a new law and using the legislative theater methodology to give inputs for this law. Okay? So this was really a lawmaking process, and it was intended.
And initiated,
by the government. Yeah? These projects here were never initiated by the government, but because we were doing this, the government in Tyrol got a little bit more confidence in doing that. And here in our case, it was not that a whole law was created in a new way, but we could have a kind of a list that, for example, that we could change a law, or that we could somehow. And about other European countries, it would be really valuable to make a research about this. I'm not so. And what is important, it is not always about laws. for us. Yeah, sometimes it's really about to get new ideas about how, for new rules or for new projects, things like this.
But you have some more examples of using legislative theatre in practice in the booklet, which is presented in the. So you go to the on USB, you have a booklet, and there is a booklet for legislative where you can find the.
There is, and there are examples from different places in the world. But we're not claiming that's all the examples, but somehow what we could grasp in our research. I think
Thank you.
Thank you.